to have Daniel Kutner with us. In 2008, Daniel Kutner assumed the position of Consul General of Israel to the Mid-Atlantic region of the United States, which is based here in Philadelphia. He's the official representative of the State of Israel to the Mid-Atlantic region, which includes Pennsylvania, Ohio, Delaware, Kentucky, West Virginia, and southern New Jersey. Prior to his assuming his post as Consul General of Israel in Philadelphia, Mr. Kutner headed the Bureau for Economic and Strategic Affairs at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Center for Political Research. Daniel Kutner joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in January of 1983. His first post abroad was as Deputy Chief of Mission in Bolivia from 1986 to 1988. From 1988 to 1990, he served as the Deputy Chief of Mission in Venezuela and as Consul for Academic Affairs at the Consulate General of Israel in New York from 1996 to 1999. Mr. Kutner has held different positions in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Center for Political Research, including the Director for Palestinian and Jordanian Affairs, the Director of the Division for Egypt and North Africa, Acting Director of the Division for Syrian and Lebanese Affairs, and Senior Analyst for North Africa and Syria. Mr. Kutner holds an MA cum laude in History in the Muslim Countries from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem of 1986, and an MA cum laude in Political Science, National Security Studies from the University of Haifa in 2005. He's a dual major BA in European History and the Middle Eastern Studies from Hebrew University of 1977. He's a graduate of the National Security College from 2005 and a senior inter-service intelligence course in 2002 and other specialized programs. Mr. Kutner was born in Buenos Aires, Argentina. He immigrated to Israel in 1973. He's married to Shirley, has two daughters, Maya and Adi. And thank you for coming to Villanova.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you. Well, good afternoon. As every time I'm invited to speak about the relationship between Israel and its neighbors or the strategic situation in the area, I like to begin by reminding my audience that Israel is a great place to live. And we are enjoying in Israel, generally speaking, a good time. We were able to cope with the economic crisis better than other countries because of different reasons. We had our own banking crisis a few years ago that forced us to take some measures which were very handy in when this wave of financial catastrophe hit the United States and later the world. So we did suffer as most of the world, especially because of the contraction of international markets, but our economy is already in its second or third decade of radical change from our first 40, 50 years of existence. We moved from a planned state-driven economy into one that is actually based on a free market competition. From protection, we moved into an economy that's facing outwards, and Israel today is an export economy, and therefore, of course, our exposure to the situation in the world. We began seeing a bouncing back from contraction at the end of 2009, and since then, Israel has been slowly but steadily improving its macroeconomic situation. That is accompanied by a process. It's not very easy of reduction of our debt, internal, external, the reduction of our budget. The budget, since already a few years, has been set up to become a specific percentage of our national product. And therefore, there is little discussion today about how much deficit we should have. It's set up in the budget law, and if our product increases, the budget will increase, otherwise it won't. The place of government in our overall economy has been shrinking. That, of course, places us in a number of dilemmas regarding social policy. It may sound familiar to some of you. After all, if the kilt is only that big, and there is in a place like in a country like ours with so many demands on the budget, security, social, what do you do? It's a matter of very vivid debate. And lately, our democracy has been put into another, I think, very healthy test. Those of you who have followed events may know about the series of popular protests that took place in all of the big and many of the smaller cities in Israel, which mainly younger people are demanding solutions for social problems, mainly housing, but also others. And in generally speaking, a new maybe a set of priorities that will take into consideration also the possibilities and the future of the younger generations. And I'm mentioning that in order to stress that Israel as a country is faring pretty well. Not that we don't have problems, but it's a country that has the mechanism to deal with its problems thanks to its democratic structure, quite distinct in an area where democracy is in short supply. It has managed to climb on the train of globalization and economic economic growth in this era of global economy, and where competition doesn't, you don't compete against your other Israeli companies somewhere else, but actually we are competing with China, we are competing with Sudan, we are competing with the whole world. And we are there. We are there as a country that produces high technology, electronic. It produces entrepreneurship and actually exports some of its ideas. There has been already for many years a steady flow of capital coming into Israel to buy young companies, startups, so that they can be absorbed in the global operations of these big companies and corporations. And that has put us in a relatively good place in this cruel world of global competition. Our tourism has increased every year. Today, it's a healthy problem. But today we have a problem of finding enough rooms in Jerusalem. Tel Aviv has become a sort of world phenomenon and a magnet for tourists of everywhere. The city itself is a center of life, cultural activity. And its motto is the city that never sleeps, and it really is so. The combination of nightlife, beachfront, makes it very attractive. And therefore, when we speak about our challenges regional and others, we have to consider that, after all, we are having a good time in Israel. We're not forgetting our problems, but we're confronting them. And all things considered, it's good to be in Israel in these days. It is good to live in Israel. We can come back to that later. But if we look at the challenges we face in the region, well, we're a Jewish state, so we worry. We worry all the time, and we have good reasons. Luckily, we are able to produce solutions to some of the problems at least. But if we look around, we are seeing now an area that it's in the center of some sort of world of fluidity, transition. Things have happened in the Middle East since the beginning of the year that very few people were able to predict. Trends that seem to be iron cast in our analysis of events for decades now have changed direction. As I was talking to a friend the other day, the analysis were all correct. Reality was wrong. And so we have these situations in which suddenly our surrounding region is changing, and we're not yet sure what does it mean for our security. One of the pillars of Israel's security is our peace treaty with Egypt. Egypt has been a country that was under an authoritarian regime for many, many years. And today is in a state of transition. It's not clear yet what will come out of that turmoil. Still, the country is ruled by a Supreme Military Council that has derived some of its governing authority into a civilian government. Elections to the parliament, to the presidency are expected before the end of the year, but we don't have any a specific date yet, and still we are talking about a few months ahead. As Israelis, as everybody else, were quite enthusiastic about the young spirit that seemed to permeate the demonstrations in Tahrir Square, in Liberation Square in Cairo at the beginning of the year. Suddenly, there was a whole new group of technically savvy, of Western-oriented, seemingly liberal young people leading social change. I mean, all of us who had been following events in the Middle East, of course, we knew that they existed. You heard from my generous introduction that I spent many years at the Center for Policy Research working on the Middle East. We saw them, but we saw how also the regime was so able to repress any political expression of these circles that were seeking for a political change, an opening to democracy. And they were not able actually to translate their aspirations into political power until the beginning of the year. But now we're looking for them in the streets. We are looking for them in the incipient political organizations that are being formed in preparation and anticipation for the elections. And we don't see them anymore. I mean, they are there, but they are not organized. They are divided. There is atomization among those circles, not clear leadership. On the other hand, we are seeing other movements that were conspicuously absent at least in the first stages of the revolution, and now they're becoming stronger. They have experience in underground organization under the Mubarak regime, and they're using that experience in order to gain advantage. I'm talking about mainly about the Muslim Brotherhood and its offshoots. The new spirit of democracy has allowed to even more radical organizations to appear. And we are afraid that they will be able to take advantage of this new democratic process better than the Western-oriented, more liberal-minded, secular circles. We are already seeing how the subject of relations with Israel is being singled out as another weapon in their attacks against the government. You may have heard about the events of last weekend in which a mob actually attacked the Israeli embassy and actually broke into the embassy itself. And luckily, after 12 hours violent attack, when they were at the point of breaking into the very last door that separated them from the 6 Israeli diplomats that had found refuge in the inner rooms of the embassy, at the very last moment, Egyptian commandos came and saved their lives, actually. We don't know what would have happened if that last door would have been broken and the mob reached our remaining diplomats there. The Israeli embassy was not the only building attacked. There were other attacks against police stations and other symbols of government. But it gives us a bad feeling about what our relations with Egypt, as I mentioned, so important as they are going to look like in the future. And whether a future government will not be tempted to use relations with Israel as a way of soothing the ire of the masses of the crowd, and trying to channel in that direction their lack of satisfaction with things in general. Because we know, regretfully, that all the demands, justified as they are going to be very hard to be met by a new government. Many of the ills of the ancien regime are not going to find an easy solution, even in the best situation of a new democracy. Economic problems, I mean, the political problems, maybe they will find, there will be a complete change, a positive change. Freedom of expression, freedom of reunion. The emergency state was canceled and now reinstated again in these last days. But maybe that will be temporary. But the social and economic problems are not going to be solved from today or tomorrow. Some of them actually are going to be harder to cope with a new popular regime than in the past. But let's not get into the details unless you will want to ask questions about that later on. So one of these pillars of our security, the relations with Egypt, are under a big question mark. In our northern frontier, again, big question marks. What's going to happen in Syria? Lebanon is in some ways a reflection as one of the battlefield where Syria has been trying to fight its war against Israel. Regretfully, it has also been the battlefield where Iran tries to fight its war against Israel in the framework of an Islamist, anti-Western worldview. So there are questions about the future of the Syrian regime, and for good reason. The Syrian regime has actually governed with an iron fist for quite some time. One of the last rebouts of a single-party system in the Arab world. It's a good place to see how an Arab socialist regime what looked like in the past. In the past, there were a few of them. Now, especially after the changes in Iraq, Syria seems to have been to remain the only Ba'athist, the only regime ruled by the Ba'ath Arab Nationalist Party left in the Middle East. But no dictatorship can last forever. Yet the situation is quite fluid. The rebellion has taken place mainly in peripheral cities, and not in the two main centers of power, Aleppo and the capital city, Damascus, which allowed the regime to send the most loyal troops to repress the demonstrators in different places, while keeping their forces in reserve. And it's to be seen whether many of these circles, traditional circles that had linked their destiny in the past with the Assad dynasty, with Bashar al-Assad today, Hafez al-Assad in the past, are going to definitely break with it or not. It looks as if maybe slowly, but persistently, the stability of the present regime is being eroded. And it's not hard to understand why many people assess that eventually the regime will fall. But surely not without a fight, because this is a regime led by a minority. And the future of these minorities' hegemony on Syria is at stake. This minority, the Alawites, a religious offshoot of Islam, has had an oversized role in Syrian politics for decades. And the changing of government in their case means the loss of power, and they're going to fight. Bashar al-Assad is looking at what is happening in Tunisia, how Ben Ali, in absentia, is being tried for a good list of crimes. Maybe he took inspiration on the example of Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, that defied the masses and refused to step down, refused to go anywhere, and is fighting. Probably now he's a little disappointed of the apparent outcome of that rebellion, but it took 6 months to decide things in Libya, and I'm not sure that we are seeing the last chapter, the epilogue of the last chapter. We still have bibliography and acknowledgements. So we may still see things developing in Syria for a while before we see another regime coming out there. And then also we can ask the question, who is going to replace Assad and what it's going to be? By its very nature, dictatorships actually do not allow for opposition parties to flourish and get strong. The only strong opposition that we knew about in Syria in the past were, again, the Muslim Brotherhood. They were repressed brutally in the 80s. And we know that they have been somehow rebuilding their power base in the last years, but still under severe repression. We know about a more, let's call it liberal for the sake of the discussion, opposition, mainly intellectuals claiming for freedom of expression, academic professors or thinkers claiming for political pluralism. There was there were a few months at the beginning of Bashar's rule in which Syrians thought that things will develop differently. They were seriously disappointed, but you knew they were there. But today, there's no organization, there is no one group. Some of these groups that are working in exile do not have a popular following there. So there is still a big question mark regarding what is going to succeed, who is going to succeed Assad, and how is it going to look like? Question marks. But from our own peculiar little perspective from Israel, it can be worse than Bashar al-Assad. Bashar al-Assad is behind the growth of Hezbollah in Lebanon. He has been arming together with Iran the most recalcitrant political and religious extremists in Lebanon, and I hold a big chunk of the responsibility for or the last wars we had with Hezbollah. But surely one of the, for us, more critical questions regard our relations with our closer neighbors, with the Palestinians. It's a sad story because many of us were so hopeful during the 90s. And then came for different reasons, the process didn't proceed as neither us nor the Palestinians expected. And regretfully, we saw a return of Palestinians to armed struggle during the last decade, following what was called the Second Intifada from the year 2000. And that brought us back many years. And today we haven't yet gone back to the place we were during the 90s, in which the hopes were so high. Israel has expressed in many occasions its desire to go back to the negotiating table. And the Palestinians have not agreed to do that. Today, they're putting their hopes on an international and a diplomatic move, which they expect to recognize Palestine as a state in the UN. They're probably going to, well, they haven't yet said exactly how are they going to proceed. There are two main directions. One is to ask the Security Council for membership. This bid is going, this way is going to be met with opposition from the Security Council, not only from the United States, that has expressed its opposition to this policy, but from other countries too. If the Security Council doesn't approve the Palestinian request for statehood, they will probably call for a meeting of the General Assembly that has the authority to discuss the subject and recognize the Palestine as a non-member state in observer status. Like, for example, the Holy See, the Vatican today, or Switzerland in years past, when was, you know, some years ago, Switzerland was not a member of the United Nations. In that way, they hope to strengthen their position in the face of vis-a-vis Israel. We think this is very wrong. It's not going to advance the peace process. It's going to harm it. We believe that the only way to create a Palestinian state, and the only way it's going to happen in reality on the ground, and not only on paper or in New York, is by negotiations. And negotiations imply a lot of difficult decisions from both sides. We know that, and our leadership, including present leadership, has expressed its willingness to take difficult decisions. Of course, we have our position, and Israel wants to defend its security, its interests in the framework of those negotiations. But first of all, we have to sit down and discuss it, and everything will be on the table. In the past shows us that solutions, those things that did work in the past, for example, between us and Egypt, Israel and Jordan, were the product of negotiations between the parties, and it was not imposed from without. We think this is going to be the case here too. Whatever the solution will be, it will be a solution that will be agreed upon by Palestinians and Israelis sitting together, not by any United Nations scheme or somebody else that will come from outside. And surely it's not a UN resolution that's going to bring about the response to what the Palestinians and Israelis have to agree upon. Actually, by their move now diplomatically in the UN arena, the Palestinians are turning their back to the previous agreements that they have signed with us, that specifically call for negotiations and deny or calls on the parties to not to change the status of the Palestinian territories of the West Bank, the Gaza Strip. Here, the Palestinians are trying to do exactly that, changing that status. And we are afraid also that this whole move will bring about a new wave of violence. Palestinians have called for popular demonstrations during this, accompanying this process. I believe the sincerity of Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian president, when he says that these demonstrations are going to be peaceful. But we look around in the area and we see how easy it is for the dynamics of violence to take hold of any massive event. And we are afraid that actually we are going to face violence, whether we intended it at the beginning or not. And that will again bring us back and make peacemaking even more difficult. In addition to that, if we think today recognition of Palestine, what will it mean? I mean, regretfully, Palestinian territories, its two components, they don't talk to each other. The West Bank is under the control of the Palestinian Authority under Mahmoud Abbas, But the Gaza Strip is under the control of a terrorist entity, of Hamas, declared a terrorist entity by the United States, England, Great Britain, other countries. So if you recognize Palestine, what does it mean? Does it mean you recognize Hamas too? Most probably, most countries will say no, but this is a country that you are recognizing right now. So isn't this legitimizing the rule of Hamas in part of the Palestinian territory? The questions that are raised by this diplomatic move are enormous. I think it is a big Palestinian mistake. I would venture to say that it may stem from an inherent weakness of Palestinian leadership today and its inability to confront the difficult questions that will have to be resolved in the framework of actual negotiations. Are the Palestinians today willing to confront the question of, for example, a solution of their refugee problems? Probably not, because it means, an agreement with Israel means telling the Palestinian people that most Palestinians are not going to be able to go back to Israel, but they will find a solution to their problem in the framework of a Palestinian state. Questions of Jerusalem, questions of borders. We are afraid that the inherent weakness of Palestinian leadership is behind this move to try to find a shortcut through the international organizations. Regretfully, that is not going to be enough in order to change the situation in the ground. There is no alternative but to come back to the negotiating table where all subjects will be discussed. So I want to mention one other element in our big strategic puzzle, and it's further a little beyond our neighbors, and that's Iran. Regretfully, Iran, although not an Israeli neighbor, has singled out us as an enemy, and we are very worried that they are developing missiles, long-range missiles that are today, not tomorrow, not in the future, but today able to reach the whole of Israeli territory. As a matter of fact, not only ours. It's the weapons they are developing will be able to reach southeastern Europe too very soon. At the same time, they are developing a nuclear program which has been under sanctions by the United Nations Security Council because they suspect that it intends to develop nuclear weapons. That combination, missiles, nuclear program, we have reasons to be very worried. In this case, the good news is that it's not only us, it's the whole international community that has identified that as an international problem, and has put Iran under sanctions in order to try to persuade it to change its nuclear capability. Regretfully, we are not seeing results, and they are moving full steam ahead with the program, despite the way it damages Iranian economy, Iranian society. So this is an issue that the international community will have to confront in the very near future. And sometimes the headlines in the newspapers deal with other urgent issues, regional issues. We have to keep in mind that this problem is not disappearing. It's still there, and eventually we all, as a world community, will have to deal with that. But as I said, I want to finish by going back to the beginning. Israel is a strong country. its population has been forged in, by different heavy trials, both having to fight for our survival, but also trying in a successful effort to build a new country. And behind us are thousands of years of difficult history, which teach us that with determination and with the use of the human assets that we have, we'll be able to fructify and multiply and build Israel into an even better country that is as it is today. And as long as we have friends in the world, and mainly the friendship of the American people, we will be able to successfully confront all these and other challenges that will appear in our way. Thank you, and if there are any questions. Yes.
Can you comment on how you think relations between Israel and Turkey will be in the next 6 months, or is that a bit too speculative?
Well, the question was about relations between Israel and Turkey. You asked me to predict how they are going to be in 6 months. I would like to be able to predict how are they going to be next week.
I know. But do you, in other words, do you feel sanguine? Do you feel
If I feel what?
Do you feel positive? Do you think that
If I feel positive.
As worried as you are about?
Well, the truth is we are worried about our relations with Turkey. Israel has not changed its relationship with Turkey. Turkey has changed its policy. And we feel really a warm friendship towards the Turkish people, and we are very hurt by the way things have gone with the Turkish government. They are having issues, and we haven't been able to reach a common ground on how to find a solution, and we are very disappointed by the expression, the statements of Turkish leadership and the steps they have taken to downgrade our relationship. I think that when we have problems, we have to be able to talk more, not less. And at this moment, it seems to be as Turkish leadership is not in listening mode. And that saddens us. But I want to believe that the basic friendship between our two countries eventually will allow for a return to a more, a warmer relation between our two countries. Yes.
Regarding the issue of borders, a few years ago, I don't remember exactly, WikiLeaks broke this dialogue transcript of some meeting between several Israeli government officials and some Palestinian representatives. I remember Tzipi Livni was in on that. I guess it was during that administration. They sounded pretty good to me. I mean, based on the 49 to 67 board, based on the Green Line, Israel would withdraw here, Palestinian state would withdraw there, and so on. Whatever happened? Was that dead?
Well, in one sentence, the Palestinians didn't come back with that. There were, as it's well known, there were some very high-ranking negotiations between Prime Minister Olmert and Mahmoud Abbas. And finally, Olmert came down with a specific proposition, including maps, which he begged Abu Mazen to agree upon. And he promised to give a prompt response, and he never did. The rest is history. The Olmert government had a premature end, and when we tried to renew negotiations, Palestinians brought up all kind of excuses and new issues that as preconditions. So it stayed a little bit on there. But what's important to remember is also that Olmert wasn't able to extract from the Palestinian leader a promise or an agreement that once all the issues are settled, the Palestinians will agree to a cessation of claims. That if we agree on all these items, on water, on refugees, and Jerusalem, and borders, etc., then they will agree to put an end to the conflict with us. And Abu Mazen was not able to agree to that, which left many people thinking since then whether there is a chance of really reaching a point in which the conflict will find an end. But we are willing to try. And if the Palestinians will recognize Israel as a Jewish state and will reach an agreement on the borders and things, we hope that will be the end of the conflict. Yes?
We have this very intriguing electoral campaign going up in New York now, where Ed Koch has, for Anthony Weiner's old congressional seat,
Yes.
where Ed Koch has endorsed a Republican against the Democratic candidate, who's an Orthodox Jewish person who's visited Israel many times. But Ed Koch says that this should be a referendum not on the individuals at hand, but on Barack Obama. And it looks like it could be that the Republican will win as a reaction against Barack Obama's policy towards Israel, which strikes an outsider as a little convoluted, but does Ed Koch have reason to be unhappy with Barack Obama?
So what's the question?
Well, the question is, how do we interpret U.S.-Israeli relations and its effects on U.S. politics? I'm not asking you to really comment on U.S. politics.
Oh, yes. Oh, thank you. Thank you for that, because as you have already noticed, our list of problems is long enough. We don't have to get into electoral politics in New York State, which is really none of our business at all. The relations between Israel and the American administration are very good, and really beyond the tons of ink that have been spent in commenting about chemistry and relationship and personal relationship. These two states are with the administrations in both countries are close, have excellent channels of communications. There are dimensions of this relationship which are not always at plain view, and in which the administration has been most helpful. So beyond the discussions we may have, which are inevitable in every close relationship. I mean, I think that the person I discuss with most is my wife, and I love her very much. So I think there is no such close relationship that doesn't involve some degree of differences of opinion, and maybe even friction from time to time. But we have the mechanism to settle them, to talk and find a solution. So the friendship that has characterized the relationship between our two countries today is as strong as ever. And the truth is that when we are really in need of help, we know that we can trust the United States of America. When our boys were besieged in that last strong room of the embassy, and the Egyptians were not seeming to be doing anything about it, we called the Americans, and they helped us in bringing about convincing the Egyptians on the need of urgent action in order to prevent the loss of life. And it worked. So that's for us another reminder of the centrality of the relationship. And the United States knows also that when really in need, they can count on us. We are not only in many aspects a strategic asset, but we are a like-minded country in an area where there are not very many of those, in the sense of sharing a worldview, sharing values. It is true that we are facing dilemmas and trials that most of the other advanced democracies do not have to face, and that forces us to do things that are open to discussion, including inside Israel. But the common ground of peace-loving, market-oriented democracy bonds us together than, I think, any strategic service we can do to each other. Yes?
To bring the conversation back to Israel, can you comment on how the continuing growth of settlements in the West Bank causes tension within Israel as well as with the Palestinians?
And with the Palestinians? Or what was the last part of the question?
How the continuing growth of settlements contributes to tension within Israel as well as between Israel and the Palestinians?
Well, it is true that it's no secret that the issue of Israeli settlement in what we call Judea and Samaria, or the West Bank in geographical terms, is a matter of discussion inside the country too. Israel has made a number of commitments vis-a-vis the American administration in the sense of not initiating new settlements. But Israel made clear that it won't, it will continue to develop these existing communities in its natural pace. It's a matter that's discussed in Israel itself. It's discussed with the Palestinians, who had demanded a freeze as a condition for renewing negotiations. But it had never been a precondition in the past. And therefore, we suspect that it's more of an excuse rather than a reason. Because if they're worried about the pace of Israel, the number of Israelis growing in those places, well, what I would do is to very quickly go out and negotiate directly and demand face-to-face a freeze. Somebody may even claim that by abstaining from coming to the negotiating table, they are absolving Israel from any pressure actually to do something. So this is a very complicated matter. The subject will be on the table when we negotiate. Israel has in the past shown that as difficult as it is, if for peace, Israel has withdrawn from places and have dismantled the Israeli communities that existed there. It happened in the Sinai, it happened in the Gaza Strip, in a very painful move that it's still discussed today, whether it brought the cause of peace closer or actually furthered it. In many cases in the West Bank, and it may happen in the future. We hope we'll be able to reach an agreement that will prevent that kind of having to move populations. But precedents are there. So we'll have to to see how negotiations come out on this subject. But as I say, it will be discussed in the future.
The Philadelphia City Council has been asked to take a position on the Palestinian vote. And I guess I'm wondering, what is the calculation of how the City Council's vote, one way or the other, could affect this issue?
Well, I don't know, but I think it's pretty positive that the council that represents the people of Philadelphia are willing to express their opinion regarding this subject against a unilateral declaration of statehood and making it known. I think that regardless of any possible political influence, it does have an educational meaning, and of course also a symbolic meaning in the sense of expressing the support of the people of Philadelphia for this position. So I see it as a very positive step, and I'm actually going to, in the framework of the hearings they are going to have in this subject, I was invited to also present our Israel's point of view. So we'll support that resolution.
Today I received what I thought was a slightly odd email, which was saying essentially that all of the supply of lulavs for Sukkot have been completely and totally disrupted. That Egypt is the major supplier of lulavs to Israel and beyond, and that because of sort of political situations that this disruption has happened. So my question is, have you heard anything about this? One. And two, the attendant question is, this is a disruption just because everything is disrupted, right? It's not a boycott or anything like this. If you have heard about it, is that right?
I regret to confess that I haven't heard about that.
Have you, as other people?
But the question was about lulavs, that's palm leaves that are used during the festivity of Sukkot, of how do you call it in English? Tabernacle, and are usually, many of them were imported from Egypt, a land of many palm trees. So I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case, but the truth is, in all the thousands of words I read about the situation, haven't yet seen that.
For bringing you to the trivial, but it was interesting, because it seemed to be sort of, for me, I'm actually a historian of the everyday, so it seemed to me to be sort of a playing out on the ground of what we keep hearing as sort of high politics. And I mean, we hear a lot of things playing out on the ground, but it was just an odd piece of news to me, and it just came this morning, so please excuse me.
Well, anyway, it's better for if the Egyptians want to cause problems in our supply of palm leaves or branches. It's good that they're doing it now and not 3,000 years ago when we were really in need of them. Well, yes.
Well, and I mean, I moved to California. California, Beverly Hills just trims everything at this time of year. It gives it to everybody. That's why I was sort of like, aren't there enough palms?
Yeah, but the palms coming from Egypt have a sense of authenticity.
Yeah, right.
I haven't done the math yet, but if Kadima were to join the government, could there be a coalition without the religious parties and Lieberman's party?
I don't think that's on the table at this moment. No, yeah, it's hypothetical. This coalition is pretty solid, and there doesn't seem to be a lot of pressure to change it. So, and also Kadima is not showing signs of moving anywhere. Yes. Well.
If there's no more questions, thank you so much for